and welcome to the podcast with purpose in this world. Welcome to My Time with Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. And I'm your host, Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. I'm a person that was diagnosed with autism at age 3, and as a person on the spectrum, I went through different challenges in my life, such as social communication, being nonverbal to age 4, rejection, bullying, discrimination, and many challenges in life. But throughout my life, I've overcome those challenges to achieve key goals of graduating from college, be able to get full-time employment, writing my own book, become a motivational speaker, doing work on television, and more important today, an international ambassador for autism and many other causes. This is a podcast in which we'll talk about different topics, autism, mental health, and many others that impact our community and our world. And we're gonna have people as guests, in which I can interview from around the world. So without further ado, welcome to My Time with Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. Yes, hi, and thank you all, and welcome to this new episode of My Time with Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. And I'm your host, Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. And today, I have a very special interview with a very special person who I just connected to, recently, but that she and I had shared the same mission, which is the mission to help a community, which is the autism community. And so I have the honor and privilege of interviewing today Miss Tamika Lecheé Morales. Tamika, she's she born and raised, made from Puerto Rico, but born in New York. So she's a New Yorican. And also, I'm Boricua, so I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. So we already have that connection. She resides in the Chicagoland area, Chicago, Illinois, and she has done different things for the community. Not only the autism, but also the Hispanic community. She's, a dual language second grade teacher. She's a book author of her book, which I have it here, which is for the Love for Autism, which we're gonna talk about this great book in just a little bit. So can't wait to talk about that. And also, she's an entrepreneur. She has done great. She's an actress, and she's president, founder and president of the Autism Hero Project, which is a nonprofit organization that serves the autism and special needs community. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you all to Tamika Lecheé Morales. Tamika, thank you so much for being here today in this episode of my podcast.
Hola, thank you. Mucho gusto. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored, Tony, to be your guest today on your show.
The honor is mine. Thank you so much for being here in this episode today. And to make for those people that are either watching or listening to this podcast, if you can tell us a little bit about your background, your story for our audience.
Sure. My background is I'm a teacher, like you mentioned, but I'm also an actor and a writer, and I have a background in finance and marketing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I always say, why be one thing when you could be many? You don't have to be tied down to just one. But my journey specifically into autism is what started the Autism Hero Project for me. I like to say the genesis behind the Autism Hero Project is my own son, who on June 4th, 2015, was diagnosed with autism. He was right before his fifth birthday. And if I'm going to be honest, you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first couple of years, I don't think I didn't I had a lot of growing pains with autism. I was going through all of the stages of grief, and I was too busy in my woe to be present and really see the beauty
Mm-hmm.
uh, behind autism. And it wasn't until I got asked to write my story. I wrote a play called The New Year Weekend, and I was invited to write for a book anthology called Today's Inspired Latina. It's Life Stories of Success in the Face of Adversity in volume 3. And I had written my story for that. And I like to say that I had a God whisper. So after submitting my story for the deadline to the publisher, I had this God whisper that was like, Tamika, you've already written that story in the form of a play. And I had been sitting on my son's diagnosis for nearly 2 years without really telling hardly anyone. I had forbidden my husband to talk about it. I didn't tell my own mother and siblings and family. And so I decided to kind of write to heal, is what I like to say. And writing that story began my healing journey. And that's where my real reflections started to come in and realize just the beauty and all the things that I love the most about my son had to do with his autistic traits. And that's the genesis behind the Autism Hero Project, to be honest with you.
No, definitely. And your story is in connection with the stories of parents. When they receive that news that their loved one has been diagnosed with this thing called autism. You know,
Correct.
as you mentioned that you went through a period of grief, that you didn't want to talk about your son's diagnosis with anybody. And, you know, I read that a little bit in your book. And it's something that, you know, because for different reasons, you know, parents deal with the judgment of other people, even unfortunately people within their own family, which are negative and doesn't help with
Mhm.
what you need as a parent to help your loved ones to achieve that better life. And tell us more about your son. I know he has an interesting name. uh,
Yes, he does.
tell us a little bit about that, about what he
Okay,
likes, about his hobbies. Tell us
awesome.
tell us a
Okay,
little bit
so
more.
before I even do that, I just wanted to kind of share. So when I like to say that in my very first story, so I've written for 4 books, two of my own and two anthologies. And make a long story short, in the very first time I wrote, it was when I was coming to age, I like to say, right? I was kind of coming out of the closet with this diagnosis. And I write in there that my ego was not my amigo. And I write how, you know, you don't know what you don't know. In Spanish, we have a saying, lo que pasa en la casa se queda en la casa, right? What
Mm-hmm.
happens at home stays at home. And we don't talk about these things. And a lot of the times is cultural.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to kind of break those negative stigmas. And also the way that a doctor gives you this diagnosis and the way people around you perceive this diagnosis and how they react really have an impact on you. And so that is one of the things that, being on the other side of it now, right? And
Yeah.
going through those stages and being at the stage of acceptance, I realized that, man, that's what we have to change. That's the world that we need to change. But to tell you about my little guy, so he was born Maximilian Eros Morales, and quite a few years ago, I think he was in third grade, and one day we were calling him, and the very Latino way, right? Maximilian, Maximilian,
Mm-hmm.
and when he didn't respond, I started to use his whole name, right? Maximilian Eros Morales, like get over here. And he still wouldn't respond. So when I walked over, I'm like, yo, what's up? You've heard me calling you. And he's like, well, that's not my name anymore. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, yeah, no, I am the legendary Maximilian, or you can just call me the legendary kid. And we laughed about it, but I kind of looked at it as like him self advocating for himself. And I kind of was like, let's roll with this and just kind of I feed into this funny storyline that he was creating. And so I was like, well, Maximilian, your name is long enough. And that's why we call you Maxim for short. So the legendary Maximilian is even longer. The legendary kid is just slightly shorter, but it's still too long. So we really need a nickname for you. And so we basically agreed on legend because it's shorter than Maximilian, it's shorter than the legendary kid, it's shorter than the legendary Maximilian. And now for years, Tony, his teachers, all of us in the family, his grandparents, my friends, we all call him Legend. And the name has stuck. And so he goes by Legend now, self-proclaimed legend.
He is a legend. You know, he has done so much to improve and overcome the challenges. And you mentioned something very quick in terms of the stigmas, which unfortunately still affects our, the community, especially our Hispanic community, in regards to autism and special needs.
Yes.
And that brings consequences because it brings a late diagnosis or late treatment,
Absolutely.
which can make a difference if it is taken care of at that early stage. There has been improvements, but still there's
Early intervention is
yeah,
the key, which is
exactly.
how, which I know I haven't spoke to yet, and I know you're going to get to that, but the Autism Hero Project,
Hmm.
our 501c nonprofit, is all about equipping children with the therapies that they need to be able to unleash their full potential and to be able to thrive and strive, in a typical world and in an atypical world, right? But we know that early intervention, I am a school teacher, I work in the school systems. We know early intervention is really important and it's the game changer. And so when I saw how therapy, and specifically, which I know can be controversial sometimes, but I'm
Hmm.
just going to be honest.
ABA therapy.
This is my testimony. So, applied behavior analysis, ABA therapy was the absolute, absolute game changer for us more than any other therapy. And trust me, Tony, when I tell you, we had him in every therapy that you can think of. Food therapy, because he did not eat.
Hmm.
He only had four foods in his whole diet for years. He had, very heavy bags under his, discoloration, purple, underneath his eyes, very, very skinny bones, only ate carbs or candy or crackers, things that crunched. No fruits, no vegetables. So we had food therapy, we had speech therapy, we had occupational therapy, we had physical therapy, developmental therapy, equestrian therapy, ABA therapy. We had seven therapies, and he's been in therapy since early intervention, since he was 18 months. ABA obviously didn't come till much later after we got the diagnosis, but we had already been in therapy since he was 18 months and now he was turning 5. And there was some progress, but not to the accolades that I would truly be honest and tell you that we got from ABA therapy.
Yeah, and that's the key. You and your husband, you were very proactive in getting all that treatment and therapy, which I talk about with other parents. You need to be proactive. Don't look at it and sure, go through that grief
Go
process
through
and
those stages. But while I was
stages.
grieving, I still
Yeah,
put him in therapy right away,
yeah.
right? And the truth is, he was
Hmm.
already in therapy from early intervention because he wasn't speaking at 18 months. There was no speech. He was horrible sleeper. I mean, there was delays. He didn't even get, this is how much of a delay. Not only was he not much of an eater, but he didn't even get his first tooth until 4th of July week, and his birthday is on the 19th of July. So he was almost 1 years old before he even got his first tooth.
Oh wow.
Never mind that he was, he crawled late. He walked even later. I mean, we had delays in everything.
Wow. But hey, the thing is, you
But if you
guys like,
see him today, I
yeah.
mean,
How old is he? How old is he right now?
so he's 11 and
Oh,
he'll be 12 next month.
okay, okay. Almost,
Hmm.
almost going to that teenager
Ugh,
period.
I'm trying to freeze him. He's
Yeah.
growing way too fast. We're really
Hmm.
enjoying him. We've been enjoying him for a very long time,
Yeah.
and even with all of the, quote unquote quirks, I mean, he's just a funny, loving, funny kid. I wouldn't, I got to be honest, I wouldn't change him. Not, I'm on the other side of it, and yes, it comes with a lot of challenges, and it comes with a lot of work, a lot of perseverance, a lot of dedication, but the pros outweigh the cons at this stage right now, right? But that's why our work with the Autism Hero Project, as I started to mention, we buy medical insurance. We pay medical insurance premiums so that children can get access to these therapies, so that they can get early intervention. But we don't only cover, small children, we cover all ages. And on top of that, we're also, our whole vision is preparing kids with autism for the world, but preparing the world for them, because we know that they have as much to teach us as we have to teach them. He has been my best teacher, and I've learned more from him than anything I could ever teach him. And so it's been amazing just how much more than awareness, just how much he's changed me to be the best version of myself, that he's worth changing the world for. And that's what we fight for every day, is to change the world. And I know that we're stronger together. And so our vision is, helping people see that and then having them join. I always say we do much more than raise awareness about autism. To me, that's not enough. So you might know some data, so you might know some statistics. Maybe you will even recognize some autistic behaviors, those generalizations that people talk about, right? But
Hmm.
if it does not convict you at the heart to be an agent of change, an agent of inclusion, then our work has not been enough.
Yeah, and it's part of the process. It's part of the work. We had to put in the work,
We
and
have to put in the work.
I love what your organization does because one of the most common challenges that families face is in terms of getting access to therapies for their children. The biggest
Yes.
challenge I think you can agree is insurance. Be able
It's
to
it's
is
Well, it's late diagnosis, right? Because they don't have access to getting diagnosed. And
mhm,
yes, it's access to insurance. So, right, like for example, right now, I live in the state of Illinois.
mhm.
Illinois, our Medicaid program unfortunately sucks here. And it does not give families the access that they need, specifically to autism therapies like ABA therapy. And the fact that families, you know, if the doctors and the medical professionals are saying that this is the number one therapy that's recommended, and yet you don't have access to this therapy because you're on Medicaid, never should a financial barrier be, a deterrent for giving a family access. And so we pride ourselves on being that financial bridge to be able to help families gain access. We don't care about your financial status. We don't care that you're on Medicaid. We cover everybody who is uninsured or underinsured, meaning that maybe they have medical insurance like Medicaid or like an employer sponsored medical insurance plan, but unfortunately, some employer-sponsored medical insurance that are employer-insured still don't give families access to the therapies. So we are that financial bridge for them.
Definitely, and it's also part of the work that I do in the community. I receive calls from families in which they have their healthcare plans. Some of them even the military don't cover ABA therapy, so it is something that in my person, from my, I don't make specific recommendation of a therapy or not. We're gonna get into the debate about ABA therapy as part of my next question, um,
Okay.
but but in terms of, we need to get access because it is part of what I call social responsibility. Reason for it is
Absolutely.
because we need to help the families with special needs children and to get all the tools or resources to achieve that better quality of life, and which is the key. And you
So
mentioned a lot of things that, and I'm very grateful that organizations like your organization, like the Autism Hero Project, are leading the effort in this.
right. And I'm also going to say, I know people have stigmas around words, especially in our communities.
Yeah.
There's a huge, divide and huge stigmas. But
Yes.
one thing that,
Hmm.
you know, when you know better, you do better. So I have been intentional about trying specifically to use the word disabilities. And I know that, again, just like autism has a taboo behind it, so does the word disability. But we have laws that protect people with disabilities. We don't have laws that protect people with special needs.
Exactly.
So I don't use the word special needs, and I'm very straight up and say disabilities, because that's what autism falls under. And so there are protection for people with disabilities.
And you hit the point because now my question is, our community, we have to say it, is very divided. Is
Very,
very divided.
unfortunately,
Unfortunately, you have parents against adults, criticizing other autistic, other adults on
uh,
the spectrum,
right,
and
actually autistics.
yeah, and even for me that there's stupid debates with all due respect about autistic going with first person, or this is an organization here that doesn't do this,
See, you're
and
allowed to say that because you're autistic. And
yeah,
I agree that we are wasting
yeah,
our energy
mm-hmm,
on whether you want to be called autistic or a person with autism, whether
mm-hmm,
I will respect whatever you want to be called with.
same here,
But when some parent goes onto a social media community, right, into this community to ask, a very specific question about how can I please help my child? He is eloping, he's self-harming, he's 10 and he's not completely potty trained, he's smearing on the walls you know, his feces, and they're going in, or they have social issues, and they're going in and say, hey, please, I'm coming to this actually autistic group, and I'm asking you, since you are the experts, the autistics, right? And I'm asking you, how can I help my child? And instead of you addressing my question, and you want to jump on these moms, right? Because it's mostly moms, right? And you want to call them a martyr mom, and you want to go after them and say, you're not allowed to be in this group because you didn't say first person versus actually autistic, and you didn't use the right terminology, or you, like, no, you are forbidden to say ABA therapy in this group, even though you have a legitimate question or concern, right? To me, that is energy that is wasted instead of helping the person who is coming to you, grieving, looking for assistance, looking for a resource, and coming to you, who's supposed to be the expert, and you want to detour the whole conversation about something when this parent is in crisis.
Exactly.
And it is absolutely just, listen, correct. If you want to say, please refer to them this way, then say that. But please answer their question. Don't go on to say, you're not allowed to say Asperger's. You're not allowed to say, like, there's so much. Listen, it takes away from the need, and we are truly stronger together. Imagine if you would take that same energy, this beehive mentality of these multi-thousands of people, right, who have now convinced certain parents and other people in the community that they have to fight for them, which I agree, we have to fight for them. But what are we fighting for?
Yeah.
We should be fighting for access. We should be fighting for resources. We should be fighting for early detection and diagnosis. We should be fighting for homeless. We should be fighting for all of the things that our community needs, and not on which symbol to use and not to use, which color to use, and which organizations to boycott. I don't have time for that. I'm here to try to change the world, and we can work together to do that.
Well said. I was diagnosed at age 3 myself, when it was more than 90 at age 3, when it was just autism. Back then, there was not a lot of information in the early
And
90s.
there wasn't a spectrum back then.
Back then it got changed to, I was
Asperger's.
nonverbal. I was nonverbal to age 4. Then I took therapies. I took behavior.
Mhm.
I took speech. I took occupational, and I was reevaluated for Asperger's, and Asperger's is my diagnosis. But I don't let that define me, because I need to. The focus here is, autism. Sometimes which bothers me, and I'm kind of responsible for that, is that sometimes we focus on the success, the superheroes and all that, but there's dark sides, there's dark stories of autism which
Of
need to be
course
talked
there
about,
is.
especially in
The
for
spectrum is so wide. Not everything is the good doctor.
yeah, for me, I have days in which I love autism and days that I hate it and I don't want to have it. And I even heard this from adults themselves. And
Absolutely.
because I'm more concerned, okay, quality of life. I'm concerned about the adult who is homeless right now, or lost their parents, or family abandoned him or her, and that's what I'm truly
Who
concerned.
self-harms, who can't find a job because there's no employment coaching or
Mm-hmm.
services for them, who can't financially afford to take care of themselves, who, because they need the Medicaid, because they need the insurance, they take the paying wage jobs. They are, 85% of autistics are unemployed or underemployed, the highest of all the disability groups under the umbrella of disability. That's what we should be fighting for. That's what we should be coming together for. We all want the same things. The end goal is the same. How we get there may be different, but if I'm wasting my time fighting with you about terminology, symbols, when instead we can come together, agree to disagree, or I'm going to respect you. I will call you what you want. I will use whatever symbol you feel represents you, but not if you're going to try to bully us. not if you're going to call us names, not if you're going to cyberbully, threaten people, go after their, organizations. I'm not about that. I'm not here for that. I'm here to create a better world that is going to be accepting of my son and to change the world so that he has access that, God forbid, my biggest fear, when I am no longer here, who's going to be able to take care for him if he can't do it for himself?
Definitely raise, to advocate, to be able to
Advocate.
make the difference. Also, another thing that I focus on my advocacy work is not only to raise awareness about the challenges that people with a diagnosis face, but also the parents. A lot of times, people don't realize that autism impacts not only the person with a diagnosis, but also the parents, the siblings, everybody, and they need support as well. And that's what I'm being advocating as to my best of my ability. We need to. There you go.
That's what this book was about.
Yeah,
This book
and
is
I was going to ask you about the book right now because I love the title for the love for the love of autism, and what interests me the most, I want to talk about a little bit of story about how I found out about the book.
okay.
When I saw in the book different advocates on the spectrum like Dr. Temple Grandin, Dr. Curry Magro, Eileen Lamb, that caught my attention. Okay, what is this book about for the? Because I know different autism books. Then I found you, and then we made that connection. And it's like, even though we made a connection recently, it feels like we have known each other for years because we have the same the same mission. So, tell us more about your book for our audience. What is it really about?
So it truly is. There's anthologies that are out there. The truth is, when I came up with this idea, it was one of the first anthologies in mind. But the pandemic hit, and so we put the project on pause. Not only because of the pandemic, but if I'm going to be completely transparent, Tony, I went into Actually Autistic's social media group because I'm smart enough to know as an advocate, right? If they can't come to you, you go to them. And I knew that I wanted this book to be a compilation of stories from actual autistics, from parents, from siblings, from, everybody who's touched with autism has a story. And we're all impacted in various ways. And so when I went into that community, I immediately got complete resistance against the book. So I got everything from, you're not qualified to tell that story if you're not autistic. So I had to reiterate, this is an interest form because it's bringing the community together. It's all of our voices in one compilation, right? The second thing was, well, is it going to have the correct terminology? And wait, you run an organization that offers therapy, buys insurance for therapies, and they want to know the list of therapy. Well, we don't believe in speech therapy. We don't believe in ABA therapy. We don't believe in therapies, right? And there was so much resistance and fight that I was like, listen, this is an interest form for whoever would be interested in sharing their story. That's what I wanted. I wanted a compilation, the first of its kind, where actual autistics, influencers, parents, siblings, everybody would come together in one book to share how autism has touched their heart and has transformed their heart and soul and their minds and their mentality. And as I said when I wrote my very first story, when I wrote it and when I got invited to write for it, I was in a different place because I had just recently been diagnosed, my son, and there was so much I didn't know that I had to come through that learning curve, as well as I'm trying to learn as much as I can about autism. At the same time, I have all of these therapies. I have all the stuff that's being thrown at me with no resources, no assistance. I'm trying to navigate this world all on my own. Um, and you don't know what you don't know. But I saw the beauty, and I always say there's a lot of doom and gloom in this community, and that's what I wanted to break. I wanted to break the negative stigmas. I want to transform people's hearts and minds in a way where they talk about autism differently, whether you're a medical provider, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a parent, whether you're a sibling, whether you're autistic. I want us to be intentional about the way we speak about autism. And so the caveat that I said is I want you to be honest and raw about your journey, right? But you need to leave our readers with hope and let them see the beauty of how autism has transformed you. And so it's not just their stories, as you know, Tony, because I know you read the whole book already, but every story by um, every author also has a love letter. And if
Yeah.
they're autistic, sometimes their love letter is to autism. Sometimes their love letter was to the world. Sometimes their love letter was to their child or their sibling. And it's so beautiful to see that they're willing to get vulnerable and put their heart and soul on the line in hopes that you get a glimpse of what life can be like and know that please be present and be in the moment and see the beauty. Look at that glass as half full. Even in those hard times, there's something there, and so there's a lot of encouragement, which I think is what our community needs. Now, it doesn't lack honesty, as you know. It didn't lack the rawness. It didn't lack the honesty. You know, a lot of the contributors have nonverbal kids, have adult kids. Some of them are adults who are autistic. So the book really is a spectrum of stories, just like autism is a spectrum. Um, so yeah, that's what the book is about, and I'm really excited because it's gotten a lot of great feedback. It's only been out 6 weeks. It hasn't been
Wow.
out for very long. Um,
Yeah. I know.
so
Yeah, I know the feedback has been tremendous. I think that, I think this is one of the best books that captures the entire community, the autistic adults, the parents, professionals. I think this is, as I said, I read this like just like that because it caught me. I was very, involved in the stories, and I can relate to the different stories that I read. So and where they can get the book, Tamika, where do where people can
so
find the book?
I'm excited. They can order it right on Amazon. It's
Mhm.
available on Amazon. It's available barnesandnobles.com as well. It's available in an ebook, if they prefer Kindle or some kind of ebook device. And next month, I will be going into the studio to record the audiobook.
Oh, nice. You know what else you need to do, in my
Yes,
opinion?
tell me.
The,
Diga.
the Spanish version of the book.
You know, it's funny. I got asked, would I be doing this book in Spanish? And so I think our Spanish community really, really needs it. But speaking of legend, hold on, Maxim. But here's the problem. I'm going to be honest with you. The publishing company, they ran some data,
Hmm.
and believe it or not, Latinos, I don't know what it is about our community, but they don't go out and, there's those exceptions, right? There's always the exception to the rule, including myself, but they don't go out and buy books.
Yeah. Well, in my case, kind of funny, kind of interesting that you mentioned that because that I released my own book a couple years ago about my
Yeah,
life
and you released it in English and in Spanish.
in Spanish, and I have had the most success in Spanish than in the
So,
English.
do you think though it's because I follow you, Tony? So,
Yeah.
do you think it's because most of what you do, Tony, is to Spanish audiences? So, because it is, that is who you cater to. So, that's how they
Yeah.
know about it, right?
But I'm changing that because I'm fully bilingual. So my works are both. Now I'm getting more
But
into.
our Latino community really needs you because they
Mm,
need your voice.
yeah.
Because there's not enough people like you and I who are bilingual, who are out there being front and center,
Yeah.
advocating and trying to change the world and the mindsets. So we
Mm.
still need you. And
Thank you.
after I do the audio, maybe I will reconsider doing the Spanish. I mean, I want to. I just got to know that there's enough interest. And in the 6 weeks, it's only been out 6 weeks, right? So I haven't been approached by that many people requesting it in Spanish. And so we have to make sure that financially it makes sense because these books don't make themselves and they really do cost money out of my pocket. It's a financial obligation. The audiobook is a huge financial obligation, but the audiobook industry is 60% of the industry. So that makes financial sense.
Definitely. Well, Tamika, your story, what you have done, beyond the autism community, the Hispanic community.
Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Um, you have done so much. So, I want you to, before we conclude our interview, I want you
Yes.
to see if you have, any words that you want to say, any message as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a leader. Because you know that there's families that are listening to this podcast. There are autistic adults that are listening to this podcast. There's a community, a society out there that is listening to this podcast. What would be your message? What would you want to let the society know about what we have to do to help not only the person with autism but their families achieve a better quality of life?
So I think everyone has a role to play. I think that it is all of our human collective that needs to come together for this community and change the face of this community in the sense of any way, but it has to be done intentionally. I wrote a book called Inclusion, and this was a coffee book, and it came out literally just a couple months right before For the Love of Autism came out. But it kind of immerses you really quickly into why there is such a need for us to think differently and create that world that needs to change. Anywhere from employment, like I'll give you an example. I know I gave you some data, but I'm going to give you, and I have it here because, like I said, there is I've got some hardcore data that I think it's really interesting to see. But people with disabilities are the largest minority, but unlike race, ethnicity, or gender, it's not acknowledged as a human rights issue. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2020, 17.9% of individuals with disabilities were employed. 17.9%. That is it. And of that, they were majority not autistic. Hold on one second. Legends, I need you to go upstairs. You're making way too much noise. Sorry about that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does that compare to, those without disabilities? 62% of people without disabilities were employed compared to 17.9% of people with disabilities. Now, when you think about specifically how does that affect autism? Well, in that 17.9%, only 15% of 17.9% were autistic.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a diagnosis rate, a prevalence that we have right now of 1 in 44 children being diagnosed with autism, which means that of every 26 boys born, one will have autism, compared to girls at 127 or whatever that exact number is, right? We have to do something. These autistic children will become autistic adults. And our autistic adults are already feeling invisible. They don't have access. Well, it's only going to get worse if we don't start creating those changes now. These are our children. These are our siblings. These are our cousins. These are our future. They are the future. And what is our future going to look like if we're not accommodating for them? So it doesn't take much to be able to accommodate for someone in the workplace to hire them. For example, give them a visual, almost like a storyboard of step one, this is your job. Step one, step two, step three, step four. We know autistics are extremely visual. If they have a visual, step component of a social story right in front of wherever their workplace is, right? If instead of going on an interview knowing that socially, right, they might come across awkward, don't have an interview in the normal, typical interview fashion. Instead, have a coach on staff. Say, can you do this? Show them the job and give them the opportunity to do the job. Give them, meet them where they're at. If you know that a lot of people with disabilities, don't do well socially, there's a whole bunch of remote jobs, right? That you can get them to do. But some of them are extremely social. And there's so many jobs that you can put them in. It's just a matter of meeting them where they're at. And, if you let me,
Sure.
I'm going to read an excerpt that I wrote for Hispanic Stars Rising, the New Face of Power. It's only 500 words, but I think it speaks really well to not only my story, but it's about being intentional and how we can all come together. And so, si me permite, if you permit me to,
Sure, no
the
problem.
story is called Heroes Wanted. And it starts out with, I'd take a bullet for you. You'd only dare to vocalize such a cliche if you loved someone so much that you would literally sacrifice life and limb to save what you love and hold so dear. Anything less just wouldn't suffice. When my legend was born, he entered this world blue, with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, hanging on to life and fighting to stay alive. This wouldn't be the first fight that we faced together. Nearly 5 years later, a doctor would utter three words that would change the trajectory of our lives forever: autism spectrum disorder. See, I'm used to fighting. I fought my whole life to be where I am today. I was the first in my household to graduate high school, then graduate college with honors, and already have a 4-year-old son, and still go on to earn my master's degree with a perfect 4.0 GPA. By the age of 33, I owned a few homes, cars, and my own franchise business while working as a full-time school teacher. And if that wasn't enough, I pivoted my spare time dream of acting into more of a full-time passion, and then I added playwriting into the mix. I had this undeniable grit and a tenacity for taking risks, which I credit completely to being raised in a two-bedroom apartment in the projects of New York with 10 other relatives who were not my mom or dad. I learned how to trust my instincts and survive everything that came my way, but, quote, autism was different. It literally knocked the wind out of my stride. I felt paralyzed. For 2 years, I was completely lost. Then, I'd like to say that I had an awakening. Writing helped me heal and reflect, and that was the genesis of the Autism Hero Project, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit that serves to prepare kids with autism for the world and prepare the world for them. I realized that autism awareness wasn't enough if it did not make you intentional about being an agent of change. With a prevalence of 1 in 44 children in the US being diagnosed with autism, it is our collective duty to intentionally make space and be inclusive of those with neurodivergent brains, and to help the world understand that neurodiversity should not be looked at as, quote, less, flawed, or damaged goods. This negative stigma is what prevents us from seeing these beautiful humans as our equals and all that they have to teach us. Inclusion takes work and commitment. It is not a one-time prescription where you hold a training or a lunch and learn, or maybe even hire that one employee and think that you can just now check it off your list. It must be embedded in the culture. Inclusion needs to be thought about from the beginning in every business system and process. Inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. Inclusion is making a new space, a better space for everyone. And this only comes with being intentional about hiring and retaining people with disabilities. You will have to be a little creative and put some work into it, but as Hispanics, this is already ingrained in us. I am determined to make a world that is inclusive of my son and those like him. But for that, I need you.
Wow, that's your testimony is, it has such a profound impact, and that's what keeps you motivated. That's what keeps you going. And
That's my
always,
why.
each person has a purpose. I always say, that's what I believe. Each person has a purpose, and especially people that have autism, that have a disability, have a purpose. We have to work together as a world to help each individual achieve their purpose that God gave them. Your testimony is, it impacted me, Tamika, and I greatly appreciate. I'm honored for you to share your testimony, the outstanding work that you're doing. That our audience can find find you on social media. Do you have a website which can learn more about your work, the Autism Hero Project? Can you tell us where they can find you?
Sure. So the Autism Hero Project is, we have a website, autismheroproject.org.
Hmm.
We do a lot of things. We wrote laws that have passed here in the state of Illinois, making the first week of April Autism Acceptance Week, encouraging school districts and businesses to put on inclusive events and teach about inclusion, because we know that it starts at the early age. And so we want children, neurotypical children, right, to be able to understand our atypical children. On top of that, we have a certification program where we certified the first restaurant here in the Chicagoland area as autistically sensory friendly. We did a whole campaign on how to make the restaurant. It's a Brazilian restaurant. It's an awesome
Nice.
Brazil Express Grill. They're awesome, and they've been such a great community partner. We do a lot of great things. I would say Facebook is probably the biggest social media where we post so much, followed by Instagram and LinkedIn. We recently started a TikTok because we know that's where it's at, but we don't have much on there yet. We're looking to improve that. And then I have my personal website. It's tamikamorales.com. And people can hook up with me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. You can find me under the underscore New Eurekan underscore Tamika on Instagram, and that's NUYORICAN. And you can find me on social media. I'm on all the social medias except Snapchat.
I'm not in Snapchat either, but I will
I
definitely,
can't handle another social media, so
yeah, I don't want more social media, but that's just me. But
yeah.
I will definitely put all the information in the description of this episode so people can find you, learn more about your work, especially families that have loved ones on the spectrum. And also, again, the book is called For the Love of Autism,
Tony,
available.
we got to tell them about this big event we got coming up
Yeah,
that you're going to be a part of.
yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
You know, I'm gonna leave you. Tell us, Tamika, before we go, what is coming up? What is the event that's coming up? Which I think I'm. I think I heard somebody said that I'm gonna be involved with. Is that true?
Of course, it's true. We have to have you involved. So I'm excited to say that the Autism Hero Project, we are going to Florida.
Nice.
I'm excited about that. As an organization, we're looking to expand, but also for the love of autism, I have family, a lot of family and friends and book sisters, I like to say, who live in the Florida area who all want to be a part of the great work that we're doing in the autism community. And so we're going to be on Friday, June 24th, 2022, because I know this podcast is going to live on past that date. Um, but we're going to be in Fort Lauderdale doing two things. One is introducing the Autism Hero Project to the Florida community, but also we're going to be launching For the Love of Autism there. And obviously, me as the author, the main author, and my husband who contributed a chapter. There's not enough male stories in the autism community. This is what I love about you, Tony, so much is that you are that male voice. And we hear a lot of mothers, right? We hear about so many mothers in this organization, in this community, autism community, but not too often do we hear the father's voice. And so this book has a lot of father voices in it, as well as male autistics. And so my husband will be speaking that day about his journey and about even his journey into writing his story, which took a lot of work. Um, I'll let him tell you because he's really funny about the way he tells you. And just really, we both, when we got the diagnosis, we both took it complete polar opposites in different
Right.
ways. And it's not the first time I hear that, but I mean, we're just so different as human beings, the way we were raised. Oh, we're both Puerto Rican. He was born on the island, but it's funny. We just come and approach things so differently. So he has his story, I have my story, the way we look at autism. And then, you know, I'm all about inclusion and I'm like, well, I need a self-advocate in Florida. Most of the authors, none of them are actually in Florida. So you and I had connected and I'm all about, having an actual autistic share their story. We were going to actually have some of the authors fly in, but then I was like, oh my God, you're right there. Tony, you can speak brilliantly. And so you're going to be there. You're going to sell your books and you're going to share your testimony. And we're going to have a fantastic time. It's a free networking autism community but also there's going to be some great people, um, free food, free appetizers, free drinks, free connections. We're going to bring the book and we're going to have book signings. And it's a way to really connect with our community and share our testimonies and share our stories and really amplify our voices and amplify, and encourage and leave hope before people walk out the door.
Definitely, and I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm looking forward to to put contribute a little bit about my story to the cause for the love of autism, which is the most important too. And I cannot wait to share it with you and your husband, Hugo, and our people that are going to attend that event. So it's going to be on June the 24th,
It's going to
2022.
be June the 24th. We have capacity of 100 people. It's at the Towers of Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're going to link the
Yes.
Eventbrite, right? The
Yeah. That.
Eventbrite.
Yes, the people, I'm gonna put it on the description. And also they can follow your social media and follow my social media. We're gonna be talking about the
Correct.
event, so that way, if you're in the South Florida area, which I know I have people that follow me and friends of mine, they're in South Florida. Please come in and be able to participate in this wonderful event. So cannot
Yep.
wait to participate. So Tamika, greatly appreciate you and
Thank you.
thank you so much for what you do for the autistic community, for the Hispanic community, for the entire world. So keep making that difference out there in the world. So thank you so much.
Gracias. Thank you so much for having me, Tony. I really appreciate this. And yeah, you're great. I can't wait to hang out with you and get to know you even better. We're going to be doing so much more together. I know it. Maybe we'll do a volume two in Spanish and you'll be in that.
Hopefully, yeah. Let's if it is God's will, then there we go. So thank you
Yes.
so much, and again, thank you so much, everybody, to listen to this episode of My Time with Tony Hernandez Pumar. Oh, everybody have a wonderful evening, morning, or afternoon. Blessings. And this is it for another episode of My Time with Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. I hope you like it. So if you want to learn a little bit more information in terms of the work that I do, please subscribe to my social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube under my name, Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. You can also follow my website, www.tonyhernandezpumarejo.com. And if you're interested in getting a copy of my book, An Autism, A Scripted Life, you can purchase it from Amazon or any other platform, including my own, my website. So I hope you liked this episode of My Time with Tony Hernandez Pumarejo. And until next time we meet, thank you and have a wonderful day. Blessings. Yeah.